this is my review of Solar Opposites. Okay, so in this episode, the Red Goobler, back from Season 1, if you guys remember that. The Red Goobler comes back in this episode, sort of. But not as an antagonist. I should point that out. Not as an antagonist, which is completely confused, which is completely off the rails. And also, Jesse and Yumulak cheat at the mile, in their school track and field thing. Yeah, it starts off with Terry and Korvo going hat shopping in the mall. Specifically Terry, since he's the one actually going to buy the hat. But as they're buying a hat, as they're looking for a hat, Korvo notices that there's a target on his face, and then he sees the Red Goobler holding a gun. And obviously he immediately panics and pulls out a gun and starts firing on the Red Goobler. Only for the Red Goobler to completely defuse the situation, pointing out that not only that A, he's not trying to kill Korvo anymore, and B, he's actually found himself a new bride. He's actually shopping for his wedding, and then he's marrying a girl named Jen. So yeah, the Red Goobler quickly points out that he's actually pretty much in love with this girl with Jen, and points out that he doesn't really want to kill Korvo anymore, and apologizes for all the rough things that he's tried to do to Korvo. And Jen even confirms that he's not that kind of guy anymore, and that he's actually grown as a person, which is odd considering that Red Goobler is supposed to be like this ball of pure unmanageable stress that just attack and kill everything, or at least attack and kill their host until the host dies. But yeah, here the Red Goobler, with this Red Goobler, not so much. He's completely changed. He's a completely good person, and he even parts ways with Korvo, pointing out that there's no hard feelings. But Korvo is suspicious of the whole thing, pointing out that he doesn't really buy any of the things that the Red Goobler said to him. And Terry points out that he bought everything 100%, but that he'll happily go along with Korvo's whims if it makes him happy. And Korvo is just happy that that Terry doesn't have any real convictions. At which point they begin prepping the house for the Red Goobler to show up and eventually trying to kill Korvo. Only for Jen to show up and remark that she actually came alone, that the Red Goobler doesn't even know she's there. And remark that she actually wants to invite Terry and Korvo to the wedding, stating that they're basically his only family, and that if the Red Goobler can actually come to terms with them, then he could actually become a much happier person. And while Korvo is completely against the idea, Terry is quick to point out that if this marriage doesn't succeed and the Red Goobler stays happy all the time, then you likely won't come after Korvo anytime soon. And Korvo quickly realizes that they need to keep them together. So they agree to come to the wedding, but ultimately regard that Jen is kind of boring and kind of basic as a person, which she openly admits isn't true, like, at all. But they decide that they're going to make her to make her awesome and basically quote unquote fix her with the awesome terrific ray, which is the titular thing in this episode. So while Korvo keeps Jen from running off, Terry runs up to get the awesome terrific ray, or at least something that's just labeled rat. And you guys can obviously see the problem. So, as it turns out, there are two guns that are both labeled that way: the Rat Awesome Terrific Ray and the Rat Ray. And Terry picks up the latter and turns Jen into a rat. And Korvo quickly realizes that if they don't find Jen and turn her back to normal, that they're kind of screwed, because then the Red Goobler will no longer have any sort of outing for his unbridled rage, or at least nothing to keep that in check. So Korvo decides that he's going to take the Red Goobler on a bachelor party, while Terry looks for Jen, which kind of breaks this plot up into an A plot and B plot. And just in the background, Terry is trying to find Jen, but he stops for ice cream, and Jen escapes out into the wilderness. So Terry has to track her down again using a DVD box set that he knows rats will like. I forget specifically what the DVD box set is of, but it's supposed to be some sort of joke about some sort of thing. But in any case, but yeah, but in any case, Ratchan does notice it and then proceeds to kind of glom onto it. But so do a bunch of other rats. And Terry obviously loses track of which one is which, and then another ice cream truck shows up, and Terry goes to buy more ice cream. And then it's implied that he stole the ice cream truck, and then brings all of the rats in the immediate vicinity home. So he does that. He grabs all the rats in a bunch of shopping bags, but he drops some of them and hopes that none of them were Jen. At which point he goes in the house and starts transforming them back human one by one, while also using a machine on the ship to actually put all of them in bridal dresses so that he can just kind of make them all ready for the actual wedding. But he can't actually find any of them, and starts using the rat, and after realizing that he can't really find any of them and figure out if any of them are Jen, he starts using the rat awesome to terrific ray to make them awesome. So, but in any case, as all of that is happening, and as Terry is trying to prep for the big wedding, Korvo again keeps the Red Goobler occupied by taking him on a bachelor party with two of his friends. And Korvo is very deliberate to make sure that the Red Goobler doesn't actually contact Jen at any point. And also throws in the hangover themed bachelor party that the Red Goobler has always wanted. So they proceed to go out of the. So yeah, Korvo basically goes out of his way to keep the Red Goobler distracted. And they do. They have a fun afternoon at a bachelor party. They snort cocaine. They try to form a blood pact. They play Russian roulette with all of the bullets in, which Korvo admits is a mistake, and then revives the guy who died. At which point the Red Goobler and Korvo proceed to meet in the hot tub, and the Red Goobler remarks that he hasn't had this much fun in such a long time. And then also the Korvo remarks that he actually had a fun time too, and remarks that they actually did grow together as friends. And the Red Goobler then proceeds to start calling himself Chris, because he realizes that Red Goobler is kind of annoying and a pretty annoying name to go by. So yeah, the Red Goobler. So yeah, Korvo and Chris kind of have an intimate bond at this point, and Chris decides to actually read Korvo's stress line, which apparently leads all the way up to his heart, which then becomes a little bit too intimate for their own good, and then they have sex. At which point Chris realizes what he's done and how he's cheated on Jen, but he questions as to whether or not he can actually still go through with getting married. At which point Korvo remarks that they can run away and elope and the two of them can become married, but while they're going to go do that, it quickly becomes apparent that they don't have much in common beyond that, so they decide to actually break that off. At which point Chris proceeds to kind of lament on the fact that he cheated on Jen and that she'll never forgive him. Only for Korvo to remark that he can still get married and that they just have to keep it a secret. At which point Korvo realizes that they're going to be very late for the wedding and proceeds to. So I should explain this. The reason he doesn't realize that they're late for the wedding is because apparently time doesn't move forward all the time on Schlorp, and on Earth it does. So in any case, he goes to take Chris to his wedding, and then that's where that plot ends. And also the B plot kind of ends with that and reconverges into that. But then there's the C plot with Yumulak and Jesse who have to go and kind of run the mile. And they're not exactly comfortable with that since they're not really prepared to run the mile. Jesse in particular has special shoes that she can't really wear for running. They're not built for running. They're pumps, basically. And Yumulak remarks that his legs are more built for pedaling for a gunship. And Jesse remarks that they should just walk it, only for Yumulak to point out that the last time they did that, it didn't end well for them, and they got bullied for like a year. So Yumulak is quick to points out that instead they need to cheat to make sure that they don't get caught. So they decide to go into Yumulak's pocket dimension, which apparently he has. Although Jesse remarks that he should have chosen something other than pink, only for Yumulak to remark that they can't actually choose a color. And they then proceed to take a special device that basically enables them to accelerate time around themselves, so that it looks like they're moving faster. And they proceed to use that with Principal Cook then questioning what's up with the backpacks, with them only remarking that it's part of their gender or whatever, which works. It's kind of a joke on transgender stuff, but long story short, it works, and they're able to actually use it to cheat and complete the mile in like a minute. And while they believe that Principal Cook has caught on to the cheating, and indeed it does start off like that with Principal Cook even pointing out that they ran the mile in like a minute, and that's a little bit suspicious. He then proceeds to point out that instead they're actually the best racers ever, and then proceeds to set them up for regionals in Hawaii, and also has a very long and kind of humorous phone call with the woman where he argues back and forth with her until she actually puts him in first class and stop having the conversation with him, which works. And of course, Jesse and Yumilak are a little bit scared because they realize that they got there by cheating and that they're eventually going to get caught. But in any case, they're transported. They go to and sure enough, they go to the regionals. And Yumilak comes with a brilliant idea to actually slow down their time so that they can actually win and become a lot so that they don't actually win and can actually get out of it. But they quickly realize that doesn't work because, as it turns out, Yumilak is an idiot and he accidentally sets it ahead instead of behind, which causes them to go faster. So they wind up and obviously the FBI, branch of the FBI, or at least it's implied. They say some other made-up thing about how they investigate child athletes and stuff like that, but they work for the FBI basically. And obviously Jesse and Yumilak begin to panic because they realize that now the FBI is onto them and that they're now likely going to get called out for cheating at long last. Only for them to point out that they actually observed child athletes and point out that they're actually way too good for regionals and that they should actually apply for the Olympics. And they're actually they actually are recruited into the Olympics. So obviously this is just getting worse and worse. And Jesse and Yumilak quickly realize that they're in a very bad state here. And they quickly realize that they just kind of need to lose at the Olympics. And also point out that nobody actually pays attention to the Olympics, and as long as they don't do well, that they'll probably be fine. Only for Michelle Obama to show up, and as it turns out, this is an alternate timeline where Michelle Obama is president. But President Michelle Obama shows up and remarks that she's actually bet the entire United States Treasury on them, and that if they lose, that they will bankrupt America and ruin everything. So they quickly realize that now they're completely screwed. So yeah, basically, long story short, Michelle Obama is president. She bets on them to win, and Yumilak remarks that they need to stop cheating and point out that what is the point of actually going through with all of this if they can actually if they're actually just going to continue to cheat, and that cheating can only get so far, and then what's the point, and that what is all the fame for? So it's just kind of sets up that he's going to make this whole political speech about the nature of cheating and how it's not okay, but then they proceed to do it anyway and receive gold medals for their efforts, and in like 10 seconds. So yeah, they made $10 million, and they also get a check for $10 million for every second that that took them to run the mile. And basically they get $1 million for every second, and they won 10 million, so they ran it in 10 seconds. It's basic math. But in any case, after all of that, after several things that we actually don't see, they actually show up with, in addition to the gold medal, a whole bunch of other things that they won by cheating and becoming famous track stars. And they realized that they didn't really learn a lesson by the end of that, because they cheated and it paid off. So they really don't have a lesson, and they realize that if they don't come up with a lesson, they're going to go into lesson withdrawal. So they use a device that actually gives them a lesson. So they put it on. They start learning lessons that aren't really applicable to the situation, like, at all. At which point Terry barges in and tells them that they need to go to a wedding and move a bunch of rat brides to the wedding. So they proceed to do that. At which point all of the plots reconvene at Red Goobler Chris's wedding. And Korvo and Chris hiss at one another that they're not supposed to talk about what the intimate moment that they shared, because obviously that would be bad. At which point Terry walks in with a flower basket full of cheese. And that's immediately at that point where Chris realizes something is off, because as it turns out, he quickly realizes that all of the brides are acting that there's way too many brides and thinks they're doing a YouTube thing. And then after closer inspection, realizes that none of them are actually Jen, and he proceeds to realizes that something is completely wrong. And Terry does proceed to come clean, pointing out that Terry and Korvo then come clean, pointing out that she had turned into a rat and that they kind of lost her. So which Chris then proceeds to become enraged about because as he points out, they basically ruined his life because he was going to marry the woman of his dreams and now he can't because she's a rat. So, at which point Jesse just kind of spouts off a line about how you can't manage stress, you can only live with it. Which causes Korvo and Chris to realize that what their relationship is, and that Korvo was quite literally trying to manage his stress. So he just points out that they actually do need to set boundaries, and then the two proceed to shoot at each other again. So it ends with them going full circle with the Red Goobler trying to once again kill Korvo. Because now in addition to that, Korvo has since ruined his life, and now he has an excuse to actually kill Korvo now instead of just being driven purely on instinct to kill Korvo, which is interesting. So. But in case Terry quickly realized that he's the only one who didn't really learn a lesson, so they give him the lesson device, and he puts it on his head, and he gets the lesson that sometimes there is no linear lesson to learn from an episode, and that sometimes it's just best to embrace the chaos, which is entirely what this episode is. It completely summarizes this episode to a T. They learn a lesson at the end, but ultimately the lesson is mired by a bunch of chaos that people were just supposed to appreciate. And then everybody just learns a valuable lesson at the end. At which point it ends with them all reuniting as a family and remarking that they finally learned a lesson as a family. And then it pans down to the story where we find out that Jen has since fallen in love with an actual rat and has decided that she wants to be a rat forever. So yeah, Jen's never going to become a human again. So we're never going to see her again. It then fades to black, and Korvo walks out and sits backwards on a chair, and remarks that, and then proceeds to give us a fake URL that if you feel like you haven't learned a lesson, you can go to this website that's at the end of this episode of Solar Opposites. And then also points out that it's on an honor system, and that after the first time they had to pay people, and if they don't, then they're terrible people. And that's how the episode ends. So yeah, this episode was just basically about the Red Goobler coming back. Korvo learning a lesson about trying to manage his stress, quite literally in this case. Terry doesn't really learn a lesson, and neither do the Scorpions, who just kind of cheat and get away with it. But yeah, overall this episode was about managing your stress, or at least it was for the Korvo storyline. Nobody else really learned a lesson. That's it. Nobody learned a lesson except for Korvo. So, and even then it's questionable if he learned a lesson at all. So, in any case, yeah, that's my review of Solar Opposites. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. And also, check out my Patreon in the description below as well if you want to help support the show. It's only a couple bucks a month. You get access to a bunch of cool perks, and they're my way of supporting you if you decide to support me. So be sure to check those out. If you guys do support me, I will list you on my website. I also post a bunch of some written reviews for some games that I don't have time to play or review on the channel or over on Twitch. Speaking of which, I do live stream things over on Twitch. We're currently playing through Miitopia, so if you guys want to actually go check that out, then be sure to do so down in the description. We're going to be playing Miitopia until I finish it, which is probably going to be 10 to 14 episodes. But in any case, yeah, we're going to be streaming. I'm going to be streaming that again this Sunday, so go check that out. And if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me and what YouTube thinks you will like based on your watch history. So, if you want to see more of what you like, or try something completely new and completely different, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But, regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!